Jonthan Williams is like I said, the president and chief economist. We moved up 13 spots in the rich states, poor states economic outlook. We are up to number 18 overall when it comes to economic outlook. Now, that being said, there's still a lot going on that we need to work on the legislative front, right? Laying the groundwork for a better economy is one thing. Pouring the foundation within that groundwork and then building upward from there is another. That's how you move from number 18 into the top 10. Taking down, legal barriers. We are still, while we are moving up the economic side, we are still a judicial hellhole as of the last ranking. So need to work on that as well. But we're doing a lot of things right, and I want to talk about a few of those with Jonthan Williams, who's on the hotline right now. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me today.
Glad to have you on. We've got a lot to talk about. We jumped 13 spots all the way up to number 18. Tell me why.
Well, there's a lot of good news there. I mean, the Louisiana comeback story, I think, is fully underway. And one of the big reasons why was something that we at ALEC were very involved with Majority Leader Mark Wright and Speaker of the House and Representative Julie Emerson and others, and that's the flat tax. Getting major tax reform done. We've seen states across the country move towards fairer, flatter tax systems, especially lowering taxes on individuals and small businesses. And that's exactly what Louisiana did with its flat tax of now 3%. That's an incredible turnaround from where the state has been kind of as an outlier in the Southeast. I mean, let's not forget, the Southeast, the SEC region is one of the most competitive regions, not just for college football on Saturdays, but for good economic policy and good policy overall. And so that was a huge factor of it, but you can go down the list of lots of different items I know we may want to unpack. I think one of the other big ones is school choice. The economic freedom combined with education freedom with the Gator plan, which I know still needs to probably expand to more families across the state to make it fully universal for every family to have the choice to send their child to whatever type of school works best for them. You combine those two elements. That's extremely powerful in our research as we've studied the 50 states. And, why is it that Americans vote with their feet and go places and move from state to state? Why is it that businesses choose state versus state for investment decisions? These are all really important factors, workforce development and economic freedom.
We're talking with Jonthan Williams about Louisiana jumping up the rankings according to rich states, poor states. We are all the way up to number 8. We're number 18 for the 18th edition. Normally, Jonthan, when you get towards the middle of the rankings somewhere, you start to see diminishing returns on the efforts. A jump of 13 spots is a big one. Are we, comparatively speaking, are others taking their foot off the gas?
Well, there is a little bit of that. I think that, I think the 13 spots was the largest move of any state in the right direction in this 2025 edition of Rich States, Poor States. So that needs to be absolutely celebrated. At the same time, there's a lot of states that are continuing to make improvements as well. And so I think the threat is when states do take the foot off the gas, as you mentioned, you can quickly fall behind just by standing still. And Louisiana leapfrogged a lot of states that weren't taking it as seriously in this last year. And then, of course, the threat for Louisiana is that can happen to any state, right? And so states like Mississippi, even just this legislative session, began the process to phase out their personal income tax altogether. So did Oklahoma. And you've got Texas, Tennessee, and Florida that have kind of paved the way in the southeastern region as being zero personal income tax states, and they've always been that way. And so I think there's a race for competition broadly across America today, but even more intensely, you see that in places like the Southeast.
Got Jonthan Williams for another couple minutes here. Let's talk about those taxes for just a minute, because we're in a spot right now where at a 3% flat tax statewide, income tax statewide, we are looking to reduce that down. But just from a running the state perspective, there are sweet spots, and you can cut too much from time to time. Are we in a sweet spot right now, or dare I bring up the laugher curve? Are we in a sweet spot right now, or can we go down further?
I think there's always room for growth and improvement, and that's something, as we've seen across the country, kind of keying off of President Trump's call for government efficiency with the DOGE effort and just looking for ways to make government more responsive to the needs of individual taxpayers. I think there's more room to go, certainly. Sometimes the first tranche is easier. It's a lower hanging fruit to cut, and then you have to look at ways to continue to really stop the rate of growth of government. So over time, to pay for a lot more reductions. And then, of course, what you see with the Laffer curve is the states that avoid income taxes or have low rate flat taxes like Louisiana does now are going to see more inbound migration and investment. And at the end of the day, that's what creates more revenues when you have more economic activity in your state. I mean, look at, the examples, Louisiana versus Florida. If you go back to 1950, both states had 8 members of Congress from the United States House. Florida has something like 28 today, and Louisiana is down to 6.
Yep.
Now, the difference, of course, was Florida had zero income tax. It became that destination state for so many people. And look at the revenue that they've gotten as a result, not from income taxes, but sales taxes and all the other ways that they fund government services.
Do me a favor, don't bring up Florida beating Louisiana today, because we play Florida tomorrow over in Tiger Stadium, so we need to keep our minds.
Revenge this weekend. How's that?
There you go. That's fair enough. Fair enough. You talk about trimming waste, Jonthan. I want to dive down that path just a little bit, because constitutionally, our legislature is doing what they can, but there's a lot embedded in there that they have to undo before they can further cut waste. How difficult is the road ahead I feel like we've taken advantage of what we can take advantage of. It's going to take harder work and deeper digging to move beyond where we are right now.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of leadership, and that's what it takes is a consistent effort, not just in 1 year, but in multiple years, to look at those ways to make government leaner and more efficient. But the other way that's so important to look at is, one way of solving this issue is just letting government grow at the rate of the private sector or lower, and you over time begin to make government relatively smaller to the size of the economy. That's what we've seen states across the country do, like Colorado, even with this taxpayer Bill of Rights. Let government grow, but just don't let it outpace the growth of the private sector economy. That's kind of the common sense economics 101 piece of this all.
Okay, but our government has grown at a greater rate than the economy for so long that the governmental industry is a piece of the economy. So can you get the horse back in the barn, so to speak?
Well, I think so. And, this is the way that I think is probably least politically painful, because you don't have to actually go back in and necessarily cut everything. Let's put in the budget is you just restrain the rate of growth going forward. And that's what Colorado's shown to be very successful and very politically popular, by the way, with their taxpayer Bill of Rights in their state constitution. That's probably something that needs to be a discussion. I know many of the big spending items are in the Louisiana Constitution. And so I think matching that with a spending cap that could be in the Constitution, something common sense like has worked in Colorado, I think is something to look at, certainly.
Got a couple minutes left here with Jonthan Williams. I would greatly appreciate the time this morning because, at the end of a legislative session, Jonthan, when we're here in the state, we look around, we ask what didn't get done. Like, where did we fail? Where did we come up short? It's important to see others take note of what we've done right. So I want to talk about a couple of the other things in our last, 3 minutes that we haven't touched on yet. When it comes to trimming, when it comes to cutting, a lot of work got done on the Medicaid waste front. What did y'all see from that end?
Well, that's such an important point. I was with Speaker Mike Johnson yesterday in the U.S. Capitol, and a great leader for Louisiana here and fighting the good fight on federal issues. And, of course, this has become one of the biggest issues being talked about across the country right now is finding the waste, fraud, and abuse in some of these government programs, the duplicative payments and items like that. And so kudos for those that have been looking for those ways to reduce the fraud in Medicaid in Louisiana. We're seeing it across the country. That was a key element of President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill was to add the work requirements clearly. So able-bodied working-age adults with no kids should not be on the government dole unless they're working or volunteering at least 20 hours a week, kind of a low bar.
Right.
But it's something that they're getting beat up on tremendously by the liberal media across the country right now. And the other thing is just looking out for the fraudulent payments. There were people that are collecting across multiple states. States, by the way, were prohibited from looking for this kind of fraud by the Biden administration. Think about that for a second. They prohibited states from doing the checks that would have checked the eligibility for a Medicaid recipient. That's all being ended now, and we're going to have a real chance to find that waste, fraud, and abuse. And not just for Louisiana, but, hey, we got 37 trillion reasons at the national level with our national debt that this is an essential item that we must address.
Just so casually, we've got 37 trillion reasons. NBD. We're all right. We've got 1 minute left here, Jonthan. And Jonthan Williams from the rich states, poor states is where the ranking is at. Within this last minute, Jonthan, if you could just, what do you forecast as being the next steps Louisiana actually tackles?
Well, I think it's the spending side, right? And it's as James Carville would say, it's the economy, stupid. I think, in the case of states needing to keep their economy strong, keeping the tax cuts in the right direction and not resting on your laurels. I mean, this is an incredible Louisiana comeback story that I wrote about, that we've been talking about here. It's one that the rest of the country needs to hear. And Louisiana was a laggard in the Southeast, as you know, when it comes to economic competitiveness, with the outmigration, loss of jobs, people moving out of state, losing family members. The incremental progress needs to be celebrated, but then also continuing to work at making those tax rates more competitive, looking at those constitutional changes that have maybe things that have been baked in the cake in Louisiana's constitution that still need to be addressed, and then putting some reasonable spending limits out there to make sure that this progress can continue. And then, of course, as we talked about a little bit earlier, make sure that education freedom is truly universal, so every family gets to decide the public, private, charter, homeschool of their choice for their kids and determine that destiny. And you see these horrible reading and math scores coming out nationally and in Louisiana. That needs to change. And I think education freedom is the way to do it when you combine that with economic freedom.
Problem is, once we bake it into the cake, we deep fry it right after that. He's Jonthan Williams with the American Legislative Exchange Council. Good news in the state of Louisiana, and I appreciate the update, sir. Thank you for a couple minutes.
Well, thanks for having me. Take care.
Likewise. Yes, absolutely. That's not the last time we're talking to him. That was awesome.